Welcome to Pause and Reflect, Stories from Your Side of the Window, virtual reading. For the past 8 weeks, the writers you're about to hear created beautiful pieces of writing from prompts that they received over the course of the workshop. They were very brave and generous in their sharing of their stories of life during the pandemic. I want to thank the White Plains Public Library, Kathleen Dejansky and Brian Kenny for their support and partnership. I'd also like to thank Bonnie Marcus of Poets and Writers Readings and Workshops for much support now and in the past and all their good work. And a special thanks go to the readers that you're about to hear. It was a privilege to work with them, and I hope I get to work with them in the future. Normally this would be a live reading, and we would have hors d'oeuvres and coffee and lemonade. And since we all have to shelter in place still for a little longer, I suggest that you sit down with your favorite libation and snack and prepare yourself to be wowed. Enjoy.
Isolation, not for the faint of heart, and never a pretty thing. Descends like a lion mounting its prey, unsolicited, unexpected, uncaring, and unstoppable. Rendering hopelessness and trembling to those affected, today has descended on me. It feels so cold. I sleep and wake in shivers, wondering, am I sick? Is it the virus? All the tests and tests and tests confirm, no. Well, my shivers come and go in silence to keep themselves hidden, not to alarm the suspicious. But now I have fallen into weariness from keeping myself moving, walking, cleaning, and from loving in fear in order to be hopeful. What is this thing that I am feeling, this isolation? Grief comes in many shades of losses, and now, together, apart, we are collectively grieving for the loss of loved ones, loss of limbs, loss of pets, loss of heart, loss of spirit, loss of career, loss of marriage, loss of homes, loss of dreams, while each of us collectively wondering what will happen next and who will die or live. For now the worst has come to pass, with threats of deaths to come, the unimaginable, the unexpected, never dreamed of in America. Life has suddenly stopped. Not a pause, we have lost our freedoms. To come and go anytime, to any place, to any country, any school. To eat inside or out, buy food here and there, swim or not swim, linger in malls, escape to movies and theaters, to see people in homes, strangers, friends, or family, unmasked. Our freedoms replaced by the curse of isolation, which has injected itself into human beings like morphine injected into an addict, with nothing to be done but waiting, depending on strangers, doctors, the government, the statistic police to tell us when it's over. So I turn to the past to linger a bit, although I try to stop but can't, and see the traces I left behind a year ago, the coming and goings in and out of Europe, Puerto Rico, and Mexico. I try not to think of the beauty of their sunrises and sunsets. I try not to remember the smell of their exotic foods with their aromatic spiced empanadas and devastating cheeses, or remember the magnetic customs and allure of those countries, or the taste of their wines and scandalous hues that lingered on my palate at outdoor cafes with friends and loved ones that I left in the places that I touched and touched me. Then with the shedding of tears, I succumbed to the realities, returning to what is and missing what was and what may not be again. While I am lost in thought, the power of isolation and grieving grows. Impatiently listening to the wailings of the night, disrespectfully ignoring Inquiries of why. Why has so much been taken? Why so much pain? Cynically whispering, time will come. Time will make it better. Don't think so, isolation. Don't think so.
It is Sunday, March 22nd, and the weather report predicts a warm day with a clear sky and a little breeze in the afternoon. You are having fun in the park under a blue sky. The air quality is great, and the temperature is perfect. All your friends sitting around a wooden table are talking and laughing, joking about the almost past winter, stretching their arms and legs after months of unpredictable cold, wet, and freezing nights. Everyone is letting the time run freely, but suddenly, someone glimpses a black cloud on the horizon. It is full of rain, and it is approaching from the west or the east. Who cares? It is far, still far away. Yes, you reaffirm to yourself. Still, it is small, but the shade and the shape pause, ponder, dim, straightening. An inner voice echoes from the distance. The wind starts to blow a bit more, which is cool for a lovely spring afternoon. The incessant blows are rendering the silence that sometimes assault the emotional exchange between friends. Without thinking it through, the group changed their voices, and little by little, like shadows, one or another close the conversation, stop laughing, look away to the horizon. A growing black cloud over the river is approaching the city. The party gets lost in the menace. Yet, no one wants to quit laughing, listening, and sharing. Everyone wants to keep enjoying this lovely afternoon that marks the end of the winter. However, the wind blows harder and the sun goes out. One by one, your friends begin collecting the unused plates, the bottles, the empty bags of chips, and the half-full bowls. The most unenthusiastic one put out the fire, and the moms begin gathering the toys. You are astonished. You want to continue laughing, talking, and sharing. You had the last gossip about the winter break and resolutely serve yourself an extra drink. It is sweet and tipsy, and you begin your famous story about Vermont, and suddenly your friends feel the first raindrops. They look at each other. Someone said that it will pass. It is a quick one. It is nothing. It is a little spring shower. Come on, tell us everything, they insist. Come on, we have time. Finish it. And then what happened? Doubts and uncertainty and more raindrops. Of all of the sudden, you get an idea. Let's get closer and get warm. Come on, guys. It's almost springtime. It is the best beginning of March in years. Perdurance, they all exclaim. But some aren't believers. Some people in the group are afraid of the weather, the predictions. The signs of the arithmetic models alarm them and decide to leave. Others, the fearless ones, the bold ones, Keep talking and drinking, avoiding the cloudy afternoon. Let's get back to the food, you proclaim. The drinks are sweet. The fire is still burning. Yet, the rain begins. It is a real rain. In a rush, the group runs to take shelter under the trees. But the maple fresh green leaves are not enough to safeguard. Everyone is getting soaked. Although they were still calm, they are in the company of good old friends. And out of the nothing, you evoke when we were kids, 10 or 11. We were preteens. We were used to love the rain. How free we were. No timetables, no worries, no uneasiness. No time to fuss about the dim rainwater clouds that frighteningly approach. But abruptly, the sky poured down an unkindly sting. It's furious, it's furious, it's furious. The wind blows violent, and the laughing faces turn gray, and your old friends are becoming homeless folks who are looking for a way out, running as far as they can. They realize that it was a mistake not to leave when they have the chance. It was unwise not to run back home when the spring afternoon was dry and placid. Now, they all hear the first thunders, and now they all know that this is a real storm. And it won't be easy to get back in time. Get back to the time when all what we wanted was to have a pleasant spring afternoon.
An email came today from Quartel Gallery letting me know that Pond Study has not sold yet. It is available if I'm still interested. I opened the attachment to remind myself what the painting looks like. It's been almost a year since we saw it in person. The image on my screen is a decent reminder. I can see the lilacs and purples and blues and greens and bits of yellow and orange. But it doesn't capture the grandeur of the real piece. So large, we weren't sure it would even fit over the fireplace mantle in our living room. And with brushstrokes so heavy that I was tempted to reach out and touch the pigment. Funny that the painting is titled Pond Study when we were by the ocean when we saw it. It was the last vacation we took as just the two of us. After a visiting day at the boys' camp in Maine, we drove to Cape Cod for a week, staying at a resort near Chatham that boasted a private beach, a large heated pool, twice daily ice cream truck visits with free treats, and a night of live jazz. On our third day there, you somehow slept through a tornado that knocked out power to our part of the Cape. So when you woke up, we drove to Provincetown, which had been spared in the storm, for the afternoon. Lunch was a burger on an outdoor patio overlooking the bay. We were among the first to be seated, but by the time we left, almost every table on the patio was taken, by families or groups of friends or couples, enjoying the mellow sounds of an acoustic guitarist playing coffeehouse favorites by James Taylor and Billy Joel. After lunch, we wandered up and down Commercial Street, popping in and out of galleries, not with any real intention of purchasing, but because we both like art and it was a pleasant way to spend the afternoon. You gravitated towards the realistic landscapes and skyscapes, while I much preferred the abstracts. But we were both drawn to this large square painting hanging on the wall of a gallery amid much smaller works. Before we even saw the name, we could tell it was meant to represent water. The background was a mix of blue and purple hues, indigo, sapphire, periwinkle, lavender, navy, and thin wavy lines of emerald, jade, and teal were coursing up and down the foreground. We agreed it'd be the perfect souvenir of our beachside vacation and a way to bring the coast into our suburban living room. Admittedly, I was disappointed to learn it was of a pond, not the ocean, and even more sad to find out the artist was from North Carolina and not local to Cape Cod. But the work still spoke to us, enough that we gave the gallery owner my name and email so that she could send an image for us to look at as we mold the decision of whether or not to purchase. And now the email from the gallery brings these memories back hitting like a wave and crashing into my new reality. We never did measure the space above the mantle, where our ketubah, our Jewish marriage contract, has hung as a placeholder. For nearly 13 years since we moved in, the plan had always been to replace it with a piece of original art. I still don't know if Pond Study at 4 feet by 4 feet would fit there. But I know it is the last piece of art we looked at together and liked and considered, and a part of me wants to bring a piece of that idyllic week we spent in Cape Cod, in art galleries and by the pool and eating ice cream and listening to music and walking hand in hand, back into our house and into my life. But how can I spend thousands of dollars on a painting when the bathroom should be redone and needs to be retiled and regrounded at a minimum? When the boys outgrow their clothes every 4 months, when there is a bar mitzvah to plan and pay for, when there are vacations I want to take the boys on to create new memories and to ensure that their lives still have joy after heartbreak. Nearly a year after our trip to Cape Cod, Pond Study hasn't sold yet. Maybe it is meant to hang on our wall, bringing color to the room and to my life. Or maybe it is just one more memory of our life together that will slowly slip from my reach, and other art and images are meant to enter my life instead. 6 months you have been gone, and 3 months we have sat at home, waiting out a pandemic that arrived soon after you passed. Maybe as the boys and I reemerge into the world, we will find some other painting that calls to us. Maybe it will remind us of you, or maybe it will remind us of an adventure that you will not be a part of. I don't have to decide right now. Pond Study hasn't sold yet. If it is meant to be mine, then one day it will be.
Before you even say it, I already know. Ma's magical chuck steak? Yes, I believe that this recipe can serve as a much needed survival tool. I have seen this recipe do wonders. Knowing what I know, I will stick with this choice. My mother was always the cook of the family. Growing up, Ma had to handle the chores at home as her mother, my beloved grandmother, worked long hours to provide for her family. As wife and mother, she cooked for us and all the extended family holiday meals. Her sisters were not as gifted as she was when it came to the culinary arts. When we were growing up, we did not study her methods in the kitchen. There was too much studying and such to do. After the divorce, she became adept at cooking quietly at 2 a.m. so that she could have dinner ready when she came home from work. Having a mother who is a wonderful cook has been a blessing and a curse. Family, neighbors, and friends have lovingly consumed her cooking, so much so that people wanted her to quit her job and cook full time. She herself really loves her own cooking. She really didn't enjoy eating out much. As kids, we never went to another child's birthday party without having a meal at our house first. She didn't think we would enjoy food that she had not tasted and approved. Kids could eat at our house, but not the other way around. This is how all my friends came under her spell. My mother had been able to overtake the minds of people she feeds. Her cult following was so strong that people are more loyal to her than to the friends who introduced them to Ma's cooking. Even her ex-husband would ask his kids to bring a pie that she had made when she was staying with us. Her magic comes from a long line of Black women who learned to make delicacies out of the foods that the slaves were given. The less desirable cuts of meat, the overabundant vegetation, the leftover food supply. She uses this ability as she takes a cut of steak that would be tough and tasteless and turns it into a favorite, esteemed by family, friends, and prospective romantic partners. The magic is real, and if used correctly, can soothe the suffering during these rough times. Chuck steak. Ingredients: 2 tablespoons olive oil, 1 clove fresh garlic, ½ cup chopped onion, 2 pounds beef chuck steak, 2 tablespoons of salt, 1 charged cell phone, fresh black pepper to taste, 1 or 2 cloves, a teaspoon mystery ingredient, 1/2 cup all-purpose flour, or as needed, 1/4 cup vegetable stock, 1/3 cup of your favorite barbecue sauce, and 1/2 cup drained roasted red peppers, drained and chopped. You preheat the oven to 400 degrees. You place the chuck steak on a work surface and pound with a meat mallet to tenderize the steak. Flip steak over and repeat on the other side. Cut the steak into 12 or 16 pieces. Heat the olive oil in an oven-safe Dutch oven under medium heat. Add garlic, onions, and cloves. Season both sides of the steak pieces with salt and pepper. Coat with a thin layer of flour. Cook steak in the hot oil until browned, about 2 minutes per side. Remove steak from the Dutch oven. Pour vegetable stock into the Dutch oven, scraping any brown bits of food from the bottom. Mix in the red peppers, the barbecue sauce, the cloves into the broth mixture. Rack your brain for the ingredient that you don't remember. What was that mystery ingredient? When you realize that you were never told what it was, pick up the phone and call Mom. Talk with her for the hour it will take to make the meal. Add others on the call. Laugh, gossip, compare weather conditions, and for a few minutes, be brought back to pre-pandemic times. Think about the many times that she could have come up to New York and done all the cooking for a week. Allow Ma's bragging to lift your thoughts out of the dread of the crowned virus. Ma is the only crowned one I want to talk about. After all, her name is Queen. Add the mysterious ingredient that you asked her about. Do not believe that you will remember this item later. You will try to write the name down, but you will not find a pen. You will try to type it in your phone, but later you will not be able to retrieve it. Bring liquid to a boil. Return beef to broth mixture in the Dutch oven and cover. Place Dutch oven into the preheated oven. Bake until the meat is tender, which should take about 45 to 60 minutes. Allow steak to cool in the Dutch oven for about 15 minutes after serving. Please note, if Ma is not available, replace with a family member or friend who, by having conversation with them as you cook, will lift the spirit of the chef. I made this recipe 2 weeks ago. After the meal, I was asked if I snuck my mother into New York from South Carolina. As the pandemic definitely restricted Ma's desire and ability to travel, we all knew that she didn't leave her home. However, the fact that I could actually produce a meal that tasted that good made them believe the impossible. The next day, I had people stop by the house en masse, asking if there was any steak left. Perhaps there could be a Tupperware transfer. I gave food away, I kept my distance, and I made sure everything was handed off safely. Folks discussed Ma as if she was there. It was magical.
It seems surreal. It's been 4 months now. 4 months of no pickleball, no water aerobics, no gym, no mahjong, no bridge, and no canasta. 4 months of masks, gloves, physical distancing. 4 months of not seeing friends, not having or going to parties. In some ways, it seems like a death. Death of life as we knew it. And yes, I'm getting pretty tired of it. But there is no end in sight. 7 months ago, I became an ordained minister so that in June, I could officiate at the wedding of a former student of mine. Crystal and I were excitedly beginning to work on writing her vows and putting together the ceremony. Sadly, that wedding didn't take place. 6 months ago, I booked a month-long trip to Scotland with my fiancé Charlie and friend Peter. It was to be Charlie's first European excursion and the first time we sat down with guidebooks and actually planned out a trip. Charlie's preferred method of travel is to get in the car and head in a direction and see where it takes us. No reservations. It's fun, but also stressful when it starts to get late and hotels seem to be all full. I was so delighted to actually have a vacation with reservations. It was kind of ironic that the one trip we planned is the one we didn't get to go on. 5 months ago, I went to my cousin's bridal shower. The wedding was to be in April. It never happened. 4 months ago, COVID hit New York area pretty hard. Weddings were canceled, trips were canceled. Milestone birthday celebrations were canceled. The gym closed. The bridge club closed. Broadway went dark. The schools closed. We were asked to shelter in place. Although disappointed, the canceled planned trips and gatherings didn't bother me that much. I did just buy a $150 pickleball racket that I've only been able to use once, and I do miss playing and miss my other activities. But heck, we're not being asked to go across the country in a covered wagon and fight Indians, or to shut our businesses and pick up a gun and go to war. So let's just do what we're asked, and this thing will be over soon, right? At first, I tried to declutter. Ha! That didn't last long. I became a puzzle girl. I used to do jigsaw puzzles as a child, and I began doing them again. I found peace in the mindless movement of the pieces as they slid into place, and a sense of accomplishment as I completed one. The first month, I did about 6 or 7 puzzles. Hey, we'll soon go back to normal, right? 3 months ago, COVID was still here and showed no signs of slowing. Easter was a quiet celebration, just Charlie, the dog Willie, and I. Parks closed. I hadn't been to the supermarket in over a month. I made the stressful excursion, gloved, masked, and terrified. I began cooking more, trying new and interesting recipes. Puzzle Girl completed another 5 or 6 puzzles. I learned to use a Kindle, and I learned to Zoom. Hey, this will be over soon, right? 2 months ago, COVID was still here. We opened up our backyard pool. I began swimming for exercise. My backyard is a safe haven, which I'm eternally grateful. The birds, chipmunks, and squirrels are my new friends. I joined a few online book discussions, a writing group, a Zoom exercise class. I did a few more jigsaw puzzles. Hey, the warm weather is almost here. New York area cases are going down. We'll soon be going back to normal, right? 1 month ago, COVID was still here. I'm still doing puzzles. I've done over 25 now. I'm still Zooming exercise and book discussions and classes. I'm still swimming in my backyard. And as unsettling as it is, I began seeing people in person. I invited our friend Peter, who we were to go to Scotland with, over for dinner. Outside, 6 feet apart and wearing a mask. And I was still a nervous wreck. It was so nice to see a friend in person, but so stressful. Before he left, he said he had to use the bathroom. "Don't touch anything," I barked. And after he left, I Cloroxed and sanitized everything. My birthday celebration was quite different. 4 friends instead of the usual 15 came over for pizza, and we sat in different corners of the yard. That broke the ice, and I began having a friend come over for a swim or to sit and chat, always with a mask and always physically distant. Hey, this thing will end someday, right? Today, COVID is still here. It has stuck around like a sturdy tree. It doesn't show signs of leaving anytime soon, and in some states, it is on the rise. Stunned and mournful, we are resigned and are transitioning into what will be our new normal. Early morning grocery shopping, masks, gloves, waves instead of hugs. Trying to nourish friendships by limited contact with those who we feel are committed to staying safe. using ingenuity and creativity to discover new ways to do old things. We went to a friend's house for dinner yesterday. It was the first time we've been visiting since January. While getting ready, I put on some nice clothes and earrings. Earrings! There is hope of normalcy. We will survive. I'm learning to recognize what's important in life and being grateful for the little things. While walking the dog in the early hours of the morn, with no one on the street, the warm sun just beginning to peek out, the dew wet on the grass, and the birds chirping, I feel a sense of peace, acceptance, and hope. I rip off my mask and stuff it into my pocket and breathe the fresh morning air. Hey, this will be over someday, won't it?
1 year ago, George visited me in Shanghai. His first trip back to China, not only to visit his daddy, but also see a doctor to verify if he has Asperger's syndrome. A little bit different from the diagnostic conclusion from professional doctors in New York City, the result of developmental delay still made me upset. George's lack of interaction, eye contact, and ability to follow others makes him different, and the parents exhausted taking care of him. Although most of his characteristics are fit for the definition of AS, we were hoping that George just couldn't adopt complex language environments. Daddy and mommy speak Mandarin, nanny speaks Shandong dialect, and teachers in the daycare speak English. So we decided to have him stay with me in Shanghai, and I sent him to the daycare center where all the teachers and other kids speak Mandarin. At the beginning, the teachers were very enthusiastic about George and told me about how smart and active he was. However, 1 month later, they started complaining to me about how much unmanageable George was and suggested he quit daycare. I realized it was time to learn about AS and accessed a lot of information about it, and found that there is no single treatment for this syndrome. Intervention should include social skills training, cognitive behavioral therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, and parent training. After several prolonged discussions with my wife, I made the decision to terminate my job in Shanghai and bring George to New York to reunite the family and started to create the intervention environment for George. My job as senior scientist, assistant director in Shanghai, was a good start and promising for my career in biopharmacy. But my baby, George's recovery is everything, isn't it? When George and I landed at Newark Liberty International Airport on December 20th, there was no news about pandemic event in China. That moment and the happiness of our family reunion were deeply caved into my brain, with George getting both mommy and daddy with him. Soon we got him registered for preschool and everything else ready. Every time I dropped him off and picked him up, I was anxious to be told the same thing as I was in Shanghai. After 1 month of being upset, I proactively asked the teacher in George's first school, "Is George manageable and will the characteristic of George bother you?" The teacher replied, "Each child has its own characteristic and growth path and pace. Don't worry too much." That moment, I was speechless. George became confident, saying hello to unknown neighbors, and began to respond to some simple questions, although these interactions had been practiced for dozens of times. The three of us enjoyed every day until the spread of the coronavirus in New York City became a pandemic in March. George's happy preschool post when Governor Andrew Cuomo announced the state's stay-at-home order. New York State unposed policy not only closed schools but also closed offices. It was the first time the three of us got the opportunity to stay at home 24/7. After a couple of days of being aware of the rising curve of COVID-19, since I could do nothing about that, I tried to initiate social skills training and parent training on George. With the increasing test capacity and data collection on the COVID-19, we can better understand this virus. Mayo Clinic said that according to the US CDC, among nearly 150,000 cases of COVID-19 in the US between February 12th and April 2nd, only about 2,500 were in children. Hospitalization rates for children has been very much lower than for adults, even though nobody can guarantee to stay away from this low probability event, and there is still a chance to get COVID-19. This kind of news triggered the daycare center to consider reopening, and a series of messages came to ask if we would send George back to the daycare center after their reopening on June 1st. With 3 months at home, George made no progress on the intervention, which made me realize that preschool could provide the best recovery environment for him. In preschool, he will be pushed to interact with other kids and teachers. The program schedule and guidance from certified teacher will be more professional. I know the virus should be taken seriously, but when I ask myself why I'm here in the US, where George can learn much and advance a lot, the decision is obvious. During the past 2 months of preschool, George surprised us so much, and all the measures to prevent the spreading of COVID-19 taken in the care center are continuously working. Thank you, God, for your protection. The pandemic will be a history, and George is starting his own life.
You can take off your mask now, Dr. L told me, his voice muffled through his own protective equipment. He handed me a disposable paper gown to cover my clothing. We'll be going to work with a lot of water, and it splashes all over, he explained. Nice. Now I could try to imagine that the root canal procedure was a fun ride at a water park. The toothache I had tried to ignore, then endure during the stay-at-home lockdown was finally being dealt with. It had been a long, painful 3 months. Until the COVID-19 isolation orders that closed all dental facilities except for life-threatening emergencies, I was sure I knew nothing worse than going to the dentist. I had learned the only thing worse than going to the dentist was not being able to. My unabating discomfort frustrated me. I'd begun to dream that the dentist could treat my tooth on Zoom. Why not? We were doing everything else on Zoom. Maybe the Instacart delivery guy could do it. My friend's hairdresser came to her house and cut her hair in the backyard. Could that work for the tooth too? I had reluctantly phoned my dentist's office for help when wishing meditation, yoga, painkillers, and some leftover Orajel from my last grandbaby failed to alleviate the throbbing in my jaw. My dentist is a nice guy, but he has one serious character flaw. He's a dentist. I try to avoid the dentist the same way I try to avoid dog bites and poison ivy. His secretary was fielding calls from her house. She listened to my symptoms and said, "Yep, sounds like a bad tooth. I'll check with the doctor." The dentist himself called back. "See, I told you he was a nice guy." Yeah, he said, "That sounds like you need a root canal." No, we're not allowed to open yet. He referred me to his colleague, the endodontist. Now that I was in the endodontist's office, I had to believe that the gloved hands that were soon going to be deep in my mouth were thoroughly sanitized and that Dr. L and his assistant were well. Before allowing me into the office, I had my temperature taken and had been asked a dozen questions about my own health. I hadn't been given a chance to ask any questions about theirs. My pulsating pain overcame my fear. If he could make it stop, I'd be willing to take a risk in exchange for feeling better. In any case, it was too late to change my mind now. I was being faced with what appeared to be a 10-foot-long needle ready to plunge into my tender mouth. "You're going to feel a little pinch," Dr. L said. There must be a required course in dental school called pain euphemisms. If my hands hadn't been under that paper blanket, I would have demonstrated the difference between a little pinch and what I was feeling. Next, a rubber thing called a dam was fitted over my mouth. I'm not positive, but I think I glimpsed that device in the 50 Shades of Grey movie. When approached with that scenario, even masochists would say thanks, but no thanks. I don't ever want to relive the moment of panic when the doctor paused to ask his assistant for something and she had to stop holding the section thing in my mouth to find it for him. Really? Even in the midst of oral surgery, a man isn't able to find something he needs. It's not like at home when my husband asks, "Honey, where's the mustard?" And I have to go show him it's in the same place it has always been, next to the ketchup. This was different. My jaw was locked and I had 6 pounds of cold steel tools in my mouth. I wanted to yell at him, "She's busy. Just look where it always is." But my jaw was locked and I had 6 pounds of cold steel in my mouth. An hour and a half later, I shakily held on to the reception desk for stability, while Dr. L gave me instructions for self-care until I returned the next week for further treatment. He described how the affected area might start to cause some discomfort once the anesthesia wore off. I translated some discomfort in his lexicon to agony in mine. I didn't hear much else after that. He left to do whatever dentists do between patients. It was probably a good thing I had my mask back on so that my grimace wasn't visible and my groan was covered up when his assistant inflicted the last little pinch. His bill.
Step 1. Take clothes on hangers out of closet. Lay them on bed. Sort what you usually wear, what's out of style, and what you're unsure of into 3 piles. Look at favorite blue dress and remember wearing it to your best friend's anniversary party. Try not to think of the bodies in freezer trucks on Randall's Island. Remember the rule, if you haven't worn it in a year, it needs to go. Place dated clothes in a bin marked donate and clothes you're unsure about in maybe pile. Feel relieved that you're finally cleaning out your closet. Step 2, stand on stool and pull down 2 boxes from top shelf and put on bed. As dust flies in your eyes, remember to wear a mask when you go to the grocery store later. This may remind you to walk the correct direction down marked aisles to enforce social distancing. Don't worry if you get uneasy when you look around at everyone wearing masks, because they feel the same way. You find it demoralizing to be told where you can and cannot go. Remember, never take your freedom for granted. Look at all the clothes you have and feel grateful. Step 3. With sponge, wipe down a pile of dust from empty shelf. Try not to think of the awkwardness of talking to neighbors and store clerks while your glasses fog up from wearing a mask. Notice old bent hangers and toss them out. Don't you wish you had a walk-in closet and didn't have to share with your husband? Remember, never take your family for granted. Step 4. Inspect items in first box. Old photo albums, bags of beads from days of jewelry making, purple bed skirt from old comforter set. Decide to give beads to friends who teaches jewelry making class and toss the bed skirt. Answer the phone from a friend who tells you her father passed away from COVID-19. You think of your own father who died 2 years ago and become sad. Console your friend and pray that you or one of your family members won't contract the virus and die. Be happy you're healthy. Toss a cup of gratitude over your head. Step 5. When you hear the statistics of the new death toll in the United States, turn off the news. Open and inspect the next box. Pull out a few pretty sweaters and scarves. Keep them. Reflect on the collective level of protective denial of the horror of what's happening. Find a bag of soaps and shampoos from your travels. Toss in the donate bin. You read that the people at the Midnight Run need them to give to the homeless. Practice extreme gratitude and feel grateful, feel relieved that there's finally extra space in your closet. Step 6. Slather moisturizer on hands because of dryness from frequent washing. Find a dozen belts on bottom of box, some dated, some too tight. You may want to berate yourself for gaining weight over the last year, but simply toss all the belts in the trash bag. Try not to think about how you have to tell your teenager to wear a mask when she sees friends and that she can't go to the mall, movies, or anywhere because everything is closed, or that you may not be able to have her Sweet 16 party. Punch a few pillows on the bed. Step 7. Remove everything from the closet floor. Cringe at the mismatched shoes tossed in an embarrassing pile in front of the shoe rack. Remove old banjo inherited from husband's uncle. Make a mental note to find another place for banjo. If you think of how we all knew that there was a better way to handle this COVID-19 crisis, you may become furious. Admit feelings of powerlessness and disgust with your incompetent government. You punch a few more pillows and even throw one at the wall. Step 8. Match shoes and place neatly back on the rack. Try not to think about how you can't meet a friend for coffee at the cafe or volunteer at Gilda's Club because they're also closed. Whatever you do, don't remember the phone calls you made to cancer patients telling them Gilda's was closing indefinitely due to COVID-19. Try on old sneakers and stomp your feet really hard. Final step. Wipe down walls and floor. Toss shoes that look scuffed and old. Yell at the dog for barking every time someone walks past the house. Put boxes neatly back on top shelf and clothes back on the pole. Feel bad about dog and nicely call him in and pet him. To keep things organized, arrange pants, dresses, and blouses in groups. Decide to go for a long walk with music and headphones. Plan on painting an accent wall in the living room tomorrow. Focus on the next story you're going to write. Do a little happy dance that you finally cleaned your closet. Recommended tips for keeping closet clean. Continue vigorous hand washing, social distancing, and mask wearing. Hope that the country will go back to what it once was. Pray for families who have lost loved ones. Be happy that you're alive.
I skipped down the stairs absent-mindedly, turning a fragment of the prayerful song, I Hope You Dance, over and over in my mind. Never settle for the path of least resistance, I sing. I love it, and it fuels my good mood. Suddenly, I catch my rubber-soled sneaker on a high-pile plush carpeting protecting the treads, and I come to a jerky halt. I'm caught in my tracks, twisting my ankle and falling. Bursts of adrenaline pump through my veins. No witnesses to tease me, yet I feel as clumsy as the waiter who drops a tray of food and then has to suffer as the patrons hoot and cheer. Attempting to regain my composure, I sit down in the middle of the staircase and examine my ankle. Here, I'm up close to the 3 large interior portraits cascading down our center hall colonial wall. As I retie my sneaker, I peer into these treasured paintings by my great uncle, Lajos Gimish, nearly 100 years ago. His elegant and measured art depicts a world where educated people listen to opera, read great works by Franz Kafka, and are accepted into the Academy of Fine Arts in Munich to explore their exceptional artistic talent. The Hungarian formality is aspirational, if not downright intimidating, to this clumsy American. The miracle of eBay, with its vast reach, has allowed me to track down and buy at least 15 of Lajos's paintings that were scattered across the globe after the war. I often think about Lajos and what a great artist he could have become if his life wasn't abruptly ended. How humiliating it must have been for a respected artist to serve as a forced laborer in Buchenwald and then in a Colditz porcelain factory. It's hard for me not to imagine him in his last years wearing threadbare black and white striped pajamas, sitting at a long wooden table, decorating cheap porcelain plates, cups, and saucers meant for Apfelkuchen and coffee. What a maddening waste of talent, painting portraits of German officers who then tuck them into envelopes addressed to their wives, girlfriends, and lovers. I can hear them now. Ich liebe dich. I wonder if he painted the sitter in a better light, adjusting for a wandering eye or a bulging stomach or advancing age just to gain their favor. I know I would have, a small price to pay for a few scraps of bread and a bowl of watery soup. A few years ago, my husband Mark and I went to Colditz to learn more about Lajos. We walked around the remains of the porcelain factory, sitting at the edge of town, rummaging through shards of broken cups and saucers and plates. We were looking for something that Lajos may have handled or even painted. It was crazy, I know, to think that that was possible, but we were desperate to find something to dignify his existence. For about an hour, we sifted through the rubble of the abandoned factory, but found nothing. Deflated, we decided to buy a few postcards as a memento and go back to the hotel and call it a day. Suddenly, an old man approached us. He knew precisely what we were hunting for and in his broken English indicated that we should look behind the town cemetery. Thanks to this chance meeting, we found a small monument honoring a brotherhood of Jews who died in Colditz, my great-uncle included. The name Lajos Gimish, along with 9 others, was etched in Hebrew letters. Completely dumbstruck by this serendipitous discovery, we did not realize that the old man had gone on his way, shutting down any possibility to learn more about this place of remembrance. Rubbing my foot as I sit down on the stairs, I realize I know little about Lajos's life, yet I'm surrounded by his passion, his art. I take a deeper look at the portraits depicting Lajos's apartment, looking for clues. At this close proximity, the living room furniture recedes from focus, becoming a swirl of deep reds and greens and gold, a symphony of time rewinding. It's simultaneously as intimate as my own home, but as foreign as a walk on the moon. Rather than pull back and adjust my perspective, I'm resigned to the room's mystery, allowing it to suck me in close and deep. I can even smell the flecks of pipe tobacco in the ashtray and the slightly musty odor of the bobbin lace curtains framing the French doors that provide a partial view of the Danube River. I feel the warmth of the brisk morning sun pirouetting on my back, shoulders, and neck. Wake up, the sun rays sing out as they saturate the room's warm tones. I think to myself how regretful and grossly inadequate it would be if Lajos's lasting legacy was simply a memorial in Colditz tucked behind a cemetery, rather than how he lived. The deeper I go into the paintings, the more I begin to notice. More clues. For the first time, I noticed a balalaika, small and round like a gourd with a tapered neck and a few strings. Perhaps it was a souvenir from Russia. I lean in, wanting to hear the trill and run of folk music, but there's only silence. A simple pine wood cameo cabinet is positioned in the background. Loose strokes give it shape, but it remains out of focus, with only hints of books, small statues, and figurines. In the foreground, my eyes land on a green velvet horsehair chairs which cluster around an oversized lamp perched on a small table draped with yet more lace. A coarsely knotted Turkish rug lies on a daybed placed in the corner, and embroidered pillows balance on a wood frame settee. Lajos's own paintings of landscapes, a Turk wearing a red fez, a proud soldier, adorn the walls. Paintings within a painting, all telling me his story. Perched on the stairs, it hits me that Lajos and I have the same sense of style. It must be the DNA. As I've decorated my own home in rich reds and golds and oriental rugs, plenty of figurines and lots of clutter, I feel a kinship with him, a wink and a smile, knowing that my home somehow reflects his art. I'll never know how Lajos faced his death in Colditz, but gratefully I have his paintings, created stroke by stroke, to tell me how he lived. As I grab the railing to hoist myself up, it dawns on me that Lajos would probably find it inconceivable that a grandniece living an ocean away in a foreign country would be the one to preserve his memory, his art, and his legacy. But I'm also convinced that he would take pride knowing that he had given me the gift of our shared history, for me to cherish and keep alive through my passion, writing word by word.